was also watching a lot of X-Files. And just kind of talking about the dynamic of like a sort of a buddy cop or like a buddy detective show where there's it's sort of like a left brain, right brain dynamic. Yeah. One person's the logical, no nonsense, and the other one's kind of the believer. They're more open to mysticism,
free spirit kind of.
And it kind of plays off that dynamic, and so we try to do that a little bit in the film.
That creates a lot of dimension in the different character relationships too, and that definitely came across. It was a good dynamic in your cast for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, and just with short films in general, I feel like whenever you're trying to create a dynamic, I don't want to get too mathematical about it, but the more extreme the difference between characters, the easier you can create that dynamic, right? I mean, a dynamic is the difference between a high and a low. So I think you
for sure,
that perfectly.
You really have to. I think it's tempting to feel like it's maybe cartoonish, to overact sometimes or overemphasize. But that's part of the reason that you're doing a film, is to overemphasize points of like human existence or whatever story you're doing.
Glass on it.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Studio 615 in Nashville, Tennessee. Looking for a versatile studio for your next production or event? Studio 615 is where Nashville creates. Featuring a 2,000 square foot pre-lit psych wall, spacious photographer's playground, a natural light warehouse, and expansive outdoor space, Studio 615 is perfect for your next photo shoot, music video, or professional event. Studio 615 also has a network of local professionals specializing in lighting, grip, and camera rental. It's a one-stop shop. Schedule a tour or your next production by visiting www.studio615.co. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Cameras rolling.
Sound speed?
Call Slate.
This is the Sights and Sounds Podcast, a show all about learning and growing in your filmmaking journey.
Hosted by Courtney Hawley and Jonathan Everett. Market. Action. Welcome, film friends, creatives, and curious people to the Sights and Sounds Podcast, a show built by filmmakers for filmmakers. I'm Jonathan Everett.
And I'm Courtney Hawley. We'll take you behind the screens as we share our industry experience,
explore the art and business of filmmaking,
and help other creatives learn, grow, and thrive.
And along the way, we want to invite you to join us on our journey to making our first full independent feature film.
Sound fun? Then let's talk about making movies. Welcome to the Sights and Sounds Podcast, a special in the middle of season bonus episode.
What do you call it? The interim episode?
Off season,
all the terms that apply.
A yay episode.
This is Jonathan and Courtney. If it's been a while, because this is an interim episode, but hello again.
Hi. So good to not actually see you.
That sounds
no, you're
mean.
There.
No. Welcome back. Like Courtney said, we have a very special episode today. We are, in conjunction with the 54 Film Fest, we have several representatives who competed in the 2023 competition here. Yeah. And we're going to talk about film in kind of a roundtable discussion today.
We love it. We love it. We love it. We love it.
Yeah.
Do we want to go around and kind of introduce everybody first so that our listeners and eventually viewers, because we are videotaping this episode.
It is a very special
Thank
episode.
you, BCAM.
But yes, let's do that. Let's we'll go around. Let's go clockwise around here. We'll start with Justin. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Justin Fussell. I'm with Imagistorm Productions, and we did the film Others. I was the writer and director for that.
Excellent.
Nice. Yeah.
My name is Brennan Kerfies. We did the film Vessel with Team Roseblood, and I directed it along with Dylan King.
Very nice.
My name is Laura Balachic. We were Creative Arcana, and our film was No Zombies, and I did a little bit of everything, along with my other two teammates.
My name is Dalton Turner. I'm with Sloth Cinema, and we did the film Good Dog, and I, too, did just a little bit of everything. Wore a lot of hats for that.
The beauty of the 54.
My name is Luke Sutton. I'm with Psycho Productions, and we did one of the Agent 54 films, and I did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, mostly produced.
Excellent, excellent. We will have a link in the description
to all of these films so that those of you listening and or watching can view all of these once this goes live.
Absolutely. And I think it would behoove us, for those viewers or listeners rather, who are maybe not familiar with the 54, to kind of cover what exactly is the 54.
What is it? Does anybody want to?
Anybody want to offer up their explanation, or shall I
Crickets.
jump in there and put somebody on the spot?
I can give it a shot.
Let's go, Dalton.
So it's a very intricate timed competition. You have 54 hours to write, conceptualize, film, and edit the entire film that you do, all in 54 hours, and it is just as easy as it sounds. So it's a great experience.
Nobody sleeps.
Yeah, no sleeping.
Yes.
You get a meal like when you're done with it, maybe. Lots of protein bars and just random things you find around the house.
Crafty is your best friend during
Yes,
the 54.
Yes.
We love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
absolutely. Yeah, Courtney and I have done the 54 a few times, so I think this is a pretty special episode for us. It's been 2 years since I competed? It's been a
2 or
hot
3,
minute.
yeah. And I actually did participate with Team Imagistorm. I was one of their actors for their film Others this year. So I'm not biased at all. I'm going to be
No bias.
very
I'm
biased
keeping her in
right
check.
about all that.
Don't
He's
you
keeping me in
worry.
check. Yes.
Got eyes on her.
Oh.
That sounds creepy. No, yes, the 54, like Dalton said, it's a time competition. There are basically no constraints on what you can create, essentially, but you do have the constraints on your genre. You've got your time period in terms of the 54 hours. You've got a line of action, I believe. It's been a while since I've done it, but where you've got a required line of action or required line of dialogue, required action.
And
There's
then
normally
a prop of some
prop.
sort usually. Yep.
And do they still have there used to be a curveball? Does the
Yes.
curveball still
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The curveball this year was that everybody got to make a musical in some way, shape, or form because everybody had to have singing incorporated with their film.
Oh.
Singing or,
It was
it
singing.
or
They said singing
music?
in the email. It was like singing or whistling, I guess, counted
Yeah.
in the email when it said
Yeah,
it.
because I know we
Interesting.
did whistling
Yeah.
was our incorporation of that.
We had,
But-
so we had some singing in the original score too. So
Oh, that's true.
yeah,
But so what were I forget what were the constraints for this year? We had, again, the curveball was singing and or whistling. Floating, I think, was the action.
Yeah.
Floaty was the action.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of that was
Wow.
an interesting one. And then line that's how I started. We started. Right?
that's how I
think.
started.
Bright
Or
side is-
Yeah.
on the bright side
Yeah,
is.
there
Ah,
was an
slash
option.
on the bright side
Yeah.
is okay.
Oh, interesting.
And then the prop was a
sign.
sign. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is explaining some things from watching the film without
Oh, yeah.
context.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right, okay.
It was actually like having been able to watch everybody's film, it was really cool to see how differently everybody interprets that. Like having been on one of the teams, it's kind of fun because you see how you have it all come together, but then to like go back and say, oh, this person used like floating as a different, like we had ice in a cup that was floating. It's cool to see everybody's interpretations of that. And each of these films, actually, it's a very good lead into the next kind of
absolutely.
topic of discussion
Segue.
everybody here didn't necessarily draw survival or post-apocalyptic, but like there was an overarching theme of survival in each of these films, which was really cool to see. And while those aspects kind of like rang true for everybody's was very unique in their own sort of style. And I'm curious to know like if there were any specific like inspirational aspects, like is there a certain filmmaker or director, or did you use a mood board? Like how did everybody
particular
kind of
show
like,
or movie? What were your influences? And I think for this one, do we want to go the opposite? Let's go around counterclockwise. Luke.
So for me, I was a huge X-Files fan. So Chris Carter, I think, I'm an older guy here, I think. So Chris Carter was huge for me in X-Files. And also M. Night Shyamalan. So I think when you think of Signs, they were surviving aliens, and The Village, they were just surviving life. But I don't know that I planned it that way. I think it's just kind of underlying. If you think about The Last of Us is about survival. The Walking Dead. If you think about a lot of the stuff that's out there recently, I think that's kind of influenced a lot of what we're thinking or what we're doing. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's an excellent point. I was thinking literally on the drive here that with these films all having to do with survival and The Last of Us having been just so recent as of the recording of this, I am curious, anybody else here feel like The Last of Us maybe influenced their decision to go kind of a survival route here?
I'd say I did. It did influence mine for sure. The emotions of the show a lot was resonating with me. I was also coming off of like the loss of a pet, like kind of really just after starting the 54. So I was like utilizing that grief and stuff, but I didn't want to do anything that was like too like on the nose with Last of Us, because they did the emotion really well. So I was like, I was going to pivot, in our own brain. But
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I would say from watching it, I think you accomplished that for sure.
You done good, kid.
I think this brings up an excellent point, is that we're talking about these films, but our viewers haven't watched these films yet. Maybe if we can, let's go around the room one more time, one more little round table, and just kind of give a brief explanation of what your film is about.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
2-3 sentences if you
That's
can
a
keep
great
it to
idea.
that.
That's a great idea.
And I'm going to start in the middle this time. I'm changing up every time. Laura, let's start with you.
Well, our film is about it's after the apocalypse, and it's a comedy, and all of the oh gosh, how do I talk about this without giving it all away?
It's hard. It's hard.
We have a strange. My friend and I, Tori, we're living out in a small cabin. We have a stranger come to the door, and thinks that he's been chased by a zombie outside, and basically my friend Tori just has no idea what he's talking about. I don't really know how to.
Wait, I think that summarizes it fairly well. You got a couple people in a cabin. Somebody else shows up. It's a comedy.
And
shenanigans
shenanigans
ensue.
happen.
Yeah.
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Shenanigans.
Comedic shenanigans.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna leave it up to Brennan and Dalton. Which one of you wants to go next?
I can do it.
Perfect.
Our film was crime or mystery, so we essentially the film is two detectives go out in the woods to solve a cold case, and one of the detectives hires his personal psychic to make a connection with the killer, and hilarity ensues after that.
Great description.
All right, we'll
Love
go the
it.
other direction then. Dalton.
So my film is the genre we got was war or kung fu. So we went with war because I couldn't do kung fu justice. But I kind of wanted to break away from what you would think, like soldier type thing, and we kind of focused on more of a class war type thing.
Sure.
And that kind of helped us feel out what to do. Tough to describe.
It
Such
is.
a weird. There's a lot going on. Let me try this way. It's from the perspective of a character named Boris Kalevra, and he's kind of like poor, kind of down in the dumps. There in this world, there's like basically you're either rich or you're poor. That's about it. And more expendable, obviously, if you don't have money. And then the antagonist is William Blake. He's kind of trying to get Boris to run a suicide mission. And there's some dark truths that come to light throughout his journey through the battlefield that we kind of created on a farm.
Nice.
Yeah. Very nice.
Nice.
Very nice.
Our Agent 54 was based around probably the character of Keanu Reeves, where The Day the Earth Stood Still meets John Wick. So it's kind of a
That's actually like
yeah.
on
It took
the money.
yeah, I tried, but take our color palette was kind of that way, but that's kind of where I started. But we decided to go with a family film, and so basically I took the concept and twisted it around the family, just to make sure that there's family involved, and so the basic concept is is they send an agent in there to try to lure out Agent 54. I'm trying not to give too much of it away, but he knows that she's coming. But so basically, yeah, her job is to lure him out and to bring him back into the agency and everything. So it's really hard to say without.
No, that's good. I think you could sum it up at that point. But things don't happen as maybe anticipated.
Yes, yeah. I think he was hoping it would go that way, and she wasn't sure what was going on. But I think in the end, it went the way that they were hoping. So
Very nice. All right, and Justin.
So our film Others is, to sum it up, is two survivors having just had a run-in nearby, stumbled upon a house that we find out that the survivors inside are more dangerous than what they were initially running from. And without giving too much more away, there's a lot of tension that builds in that interaction. So
Yes. Yeah. All right, I kind of sidetracked us there. I think it was important.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a good thing for our listeners and our viewers. It's so crazy that we're filming this to know.
Yeah, so going back to
influences.
Anybody else want to volunteer just some noticeable influences?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dalton.
We took pretty heavily from Black Summer, the show on Netflix, just in terms of like their very immersive handheld feel, which is something that we don't typically do. But I was like, let's, use this as a time to experiment, since we also never make war films. And then I would say color palette wise, probably like Hereditary.
Yeah,
more than
that came through.
Yeah,
that
it
came
did.
through.
And
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to say, like, when I was watching y'all's film, the close-up shots of like the muddy, like all that like environmental stuff, that when y'all were like getting into that zone, I loved that. That was so awesome. It felt like like those moments in a video game where you're kind of like going into the murk of it. It was so immersive. I was like, that is so,
terrible is gonna happen.
It was great.
I'm glad that
loved
came through.
that
I
set
appreciate
design.
that.
Yeah, like I really want to ask about how you did one aspect of that to know, but I also don't want to ask it because I want people to be able to see it and be like, oh God, in that shot. So I'm going to leave it be, but I'm just going to show you.
Yeah,
people watching this later, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
yes. Loved it.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice.
Laura, any influences?
Yeah. So we knew that we wanted to do a comedy. Thankfully, my husband gave us that idea. He's like, do something unexpected with post-apocalyptic. Do a comedy. I immediately thought of Shaun of the Dead.
Yes.
That is my type of humor, and like what we do in the shadows. I'm like, we got to write something like that.
Yes.
So, yeah, it just went from there.
And now that you say that, like the humor that's in No Zombies that's
Very-
exactly
very
what it
Shaun.
is. It's a perfect
Yeah.
marriage of those. I like this. This is a fun discussion.
Yeah. Hey. Brennan?
Yeah, what that totally makes sense when you said that. After watching, I'm like, yeah, Shaun of the Dead. It's hilarious. We got crime or mystery, so we took immediately, probably inspired, whether we had the choice or not, by True Detective.
Yeah.
Probably the greatest single season on television for a detective show.
Totally.
And then Jake, who plays Sullivan, the longer-haired detective in our film, was also watching a lot of X-Files. And just kind of talking about the dynamic of like sort of a buddy cop or like a buddy detective show, where there's it's sort of like a left brain, right brain dynamic. One person's the logical, no nonsense, and the other one's kind of the believer. They're more open to mysticism,
Free spirit kind of. Yeah.
And it kind of plays off that dynamic, and so we try to do that a little bit in the film.
That creates a lot of dimension in the different character relationships too, and that definitely came across. It was a good dynamic in your cast for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And, just with short films in general, I feel like whenever you're trying to create a dynamic, I don't want to get too mathematical about it, but the more extreme the difference between characters, the easier you can create that dynamic, right? I mean, a dynamic is the difference between a high and a low. So I think you capture
for sure.
that perfectly.
You really have to, I think, it's tempting to feel like it's maybe cartoonish, to overact sometimes or overemphasize. But that's part of the reason that you're doing a film, is to overemphasize points of like human existence, or whatever story you're doing.
Glass on it.
Yeah.
So it's usually, I think, a little bit better to magnify points than to try to make them subtle.
Nice.
Very nice.
Justin, did you?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about like the Last of Us like aspects that kind of influence it and stuff, but we kind of did a lot of pre-production. We kind of looked at like locations and stuff ahead of time, and we kind of used one that was very versatile. When we get to that, we'll touch about it. But the thing is I had a character of like a story that I had written a long time ago. Not that there was anything that was pre-written for this or anything. It was called Dear Brian. And that was where we got the character Brian from in our script. So I just created this as like somewhat of a X amount of time continuation, so to speak, maybe. And that was just where like the whole story just kind of evolved from there, where it's like, what would he have gotten into after a zombie like interaction? So then, and then it just evolved into that. And I wanted, again, I wanted to do something where it was, I when I was writing the whole thing, I thought about, I was like, okay, I can do like the grief thing and talk about like how they're the last survivors and stuff. And I was like, but Last of Us kind of did that. Like they did that really well, and it was the way to convey the emotions. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to make more of a suspenseful like story where it's like kind of like the Walking Dead-esque tones, where it's like, it kind of keeps you on your toes. You're not necessarily sure how it's going to change and evolve as the story just kind of keeps hitting beats. So I kind of wanted to play it that way.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So actually kind of like piggybacking off of your comment about location and stuff.
Yeah.
Like another thing that was really unique about all of these films, but also like everybody shares the same aspect, is that it was all filmed in remote locations. And you just said that for others, you guys had found, I think it wasn't like an Airbnb or something like that.
Yeah, thankfully to Cycle Productions, who we kind of collaborated in the pre-production of everything. Luke helped us find like locations and stuff like that. And when he was showing us different ones, I was like, okay, well, what can be used in different genres? Like I've seen in different festivals and experiences before, like, these are the genres that you could get. I was
this
like,
could
okay,
fit
can it fit this? Can it
anything?
fit that? Because if you get the location, you're like, okay, well, I paid for this. And then you're like, I can't use this for anything. And then it's like, okay, I'm gonna make it work though, and then you're either like stuck filming outside the whole time, and then the inside is completely useless, or vice versa. So
did anybody else have like a location set before they like got their genre or anything? You did, Luke?
Yeah, I did. I went location scouting like 2 weeks ahead of time just to kind of get a feel. And I took a video I haven't put out there yet, but I actually ran into some deer. But our location was probably like, you get to the address and it's like another 10 minutes from the road. So I was like, I was telling everybody, when you come, it's going to be another 10 minutes to get up the hill. So,
but you're in the right spot.
But it was, and everybody went past it every time. We went past it, so we're running a little late. I was like, I did it too, but I just did it ahead of time because I've done competitions where I've waited till the last minute. And
I was gonna ask if it was because that's, I feel like location is one of those things that it's so hard to even start writing something until you have even an idea remotely of where it's happening, and to find, especially in a timed competition like this, it's extra hard because if you're waiting to write until after you've gotten your genre and like find your location in that sense, like how does that, did all three of these films, did you find a location after getting your genre?
I actually had mine beforehand as well.
You did? Okay. Was that because like you've participated in a time competition before?
Yeah, it's because, it was for two reasons. That being definitely the front runner of the reasons, but the other one is I try to tell my story through the location that I've chosen to use. It helps me.
Like nodding right now.
Yeah, it just helps with the world building. It helps it feel more natural. Like nothing's like, why would you do this here type thing. It just, I try to write the story around where it'll be filmed.
I feel like that
helps.
That helps a lot. So for you two, did you find locations after the fact?
No, I had a location in mind, actually several locations in mind of just, things that I can use already. So I knew, at least one of those we would use. Yeah.
Awesome. And then.
Yeah. I just try to kind of collectively take stock of like what
What's
could be available
Yeah.
like for the weekend. And we ended up shooting on Dylan and Emma's farm, which is like, you know, it's like taking stock of locations that you have and places that you know that you can control most of the aspects of
Right.
what's going on for that weekend,
Yeah.
and like keep variables low. So it was like it worked out for the story.
That's like, and
Which-
that's
Well, you mentioned control, and most of like all of your film was outdoors,
Yeah.
right? Which can definitely have its own problems.
just
You know,
gonna
working a
ask,
remote
yeah.
location in general can have its own problems. Did you encounter? I mean, did you have like a backup plan for rain? What was your approach to
yeah.
that side
Yeah.
of
No,
shooting outdoors?
we just got lucky, which is also part of the magic of the 54, or like the hell of it, if I can say that.
Yeah.
Like, is getting lucky or getting supremely unlucky. And we got lucky that it was only like drizzling a little bit, and it was cloud cover, so it was like nice, soft.
cloud cover is always best for
Yeah,
lighting.
yeah, nice soft lighting the whole time. So we didn't really have to do really anything with lighting
Nice.
outside. And thankfully, we got a pop-up tent, so we could kind of put the camera under the tent while we're
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart,
moving
smart,
stuff,
smart.
so we get rained on. And it was only a light drizzle. I think if it was like, we still could have made it work if it was really raining hard, but
Continuity.
it would have been, yeah, it would have been tough.
Yeah. Did anybody run into any challenges? Because I think everybody at some point shot outside. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Justin's over here like I know full well. But did anybody have like any like hang-ups because of the weather or because you lost light?
We had a few hangups actually.
Oh, interesting.
So the property that my husband and I have has no cell signal at all. So you have to drive out at least like 10 minutes to get back to cell signal. So Tori and I rode together and Alex was meeting us there and he couldn't find us. And we got there and he wasn't there. And we were like, oh no, what do we do? Like, I hope he knows to go back out to cell signal to find us.
Find you,
So we had to go back out and like communicate and then come back in. And then it was like, oh yeah, we don't really know what we're going to do because we're shooting in this 8x16 cabin that's literally 8 feet by 16
Oh
feet.
my gosh.
And we were like, well, most of this has to be outside. So yeah, I too went up and bought a pop-up tent from Tractor Supply up the way. I was like, we're doing this. Like, we're making it
The
happen.
Miller Eye water. Yeah.
literally, yes.
Yeah, that's, and that's something that a person doesn't necessarily think about because we're so used to just having cell signal or Wi-Fi everywhere. Like, to not have it, man, that fits survival and apocalypse. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did anybody else kind of like run into any mayhem due to the location that you were in?
We ran into a lot of mayhem, but not necessarily because of the location. We had rain written into it, and I was like, what are the chances of that? And it hadn't rained like all night, and then we get out there to start filming, and then it rains on us.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, everyone just bring the equipment back inside. Let's gather up some umbrellas, I guess. Most of our problem, it didn't come from the location itself, but like all of our audio equipment went out. So we lost a lot of filming
My
time.
stomach just dropped.
Yeah, like,
Oh, that's awful.
and it was insane because we tested everything and it was working just fine.
Sure.
Right up till when we get out to film the first scene. We're like, all right, we ready? We're not doing a practice run this time. This is for real. And then the audio guy goes, hang on a second.
Actually.
Yeah. About
Oh.
that. So yeah, that was probably the biggest issue that we ran into. But the rain was kind of, I think it worked in our favor because it kind of flooded the property a little bit and made it look more dingy and warlike. So it helped us. It actually helped us. The one time that rain on an outdoor shoot helped us.
You.
So yeah.
Dang.
When I watch everybody's film, I could tell like they probably shot the same day we did because it was pretty cloudy. So I was like, yeah, they filmed Saturday. And we had a tent, but I never got around to needing to use it. But I told my DP we were going to film some B footage because B footage always seems to be that thing that gets away from you during the day. But I was like, we're going to meet here. We're going to start at the bottom of the lane. And as soon as we started, it was starting to sprinkle. And but once we actually got everybody ready for principal photography, the rain stopped and we didn't have any rain the rest of the day. So
Nice.
Oh, that's
we
nice.
got
That
we
worked
just
out well.
got kind of lucky, but
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Mayhem?
I mean, we waited the rain out a little bit with us.
Yeah.
And then, and thankfully enough, we were able to, like, what we needed to do outside was after, like, the rain and stuff, and the sun came out a little bit, so we got the good, like, field walk-up shots and stuff
Yeah.
that we did. And then, but the problem we ran into was we did run out of light.
Yeah.
And fun fact, I've seen the film, the fight sequence that happens at the back door was all completely shot at night. That was not
Oh, yeah.
daytime at all.
There were many lights.
So, like,
there were many lights.
Yeah, there were many lights, many lights. Yeah.
You did a good job masking it with us.
We even had our G&E guy, like, when after the lights are all set up and we were shooting, he was like waving he was like pushing the branch to wave in the breeze, like,
Oh my
during
God,
the day.
I didn't even see that. I was focusing so hard on, because I, of course, like, when I come into that shot after that little fight scene, like, I was staring directly into the light. So, like, all that was on my brain was like, am I squinting right now? I should probably open my eyes. Like, man, outdoors, I tell you.
Outdoors shooting is challenging.
Yeah, especially
Very
when you only have like a day to do it.
Yeah.
But neat, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of what we've talked about is kind of touched on, you've talked about coordination, and we've had two people who had location, like, communication issues, no cell signal or a 10-minute drive after you get there and passing it. So every film requires an immense amount of collaboration.
Yeah.
But the 54 in particular, or any timed
It thrives on it.
competition, it really, really emphasizes that aspect. So I know in Laura's film, there were only 3 people overall. What about the 54 made you collaborate a little bit further than normal? Did you learn something else about your collaboration? And let's start with Laura on this one, since you did have maybe the most extreme example here.
Yeah, multiple hats by very few people.
Yeah. Well, I had originally just bought the ticket because I had asked Tori, I was like, do you want to do this with me? And she was like, on the fence. So I was just going to do it by myself. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm buying the ticket, doing it. And then she joined me at the last minute, and she brought her friend Alex in, who's done a lot of filmmaking, and he's a lot of really great equipment. So that really helped the look of it and the sound of it and everything. And I feel like most things came pretty easily with collaboration. Once we got the story down, we just kind of like, back and forth easily, had it written within like an hour or two after we got our genre. But I loved that we all have done a little bit of everything before in previous films. So we were all pretty comfortable, like, holding the camera, like,
Because in your film, all 3 of you were on camera, so it's basically
yeah.
just, all right, my turn to hop in
We
front, hand
basically
off the
just
camera.
passed it around, like, okay, here, hold
That's
it this
crazy.
way. Yeah,
Camera
it was-
hot potato.
Man,
Yeah.
I'm really glad that worked as well for you as it did, because to only have 3 people on a film set and pull off what you did is pretty remarkable.
It was
actually.
surprisingly consistent. I was pretty
That's-
happy with it.
That's like
Yeah.
unheard of. So you get a gold medal today. She gets a gold star.
Gold star.
We're bringing the gold stars
Bring the
back.
gold stars back.
That's
Absolutely.
a running joke
Gold star.
if nobody's heard the podcast yet. But you get a gold star. So, But that actually kind of brings us to the question. I know it's further down on our list, but when it came to writing these particular scripts, like, I know I personally don't, nobody lets me in front of a computer to write things because I start and then I'm like, I don't know where this is going. So we don't have me do that. But Jonathan does. And he brought up a good question when we were talking about sitting down and doing this with you all. Like, how long did it take y'all to get your ideas formulated and on paper? And how do you keep that from being like the biggest, most time-consuming thing?
And I think to tack onto that question, I think not just how long, but did you have a specific process? Because I know, speaking as a writer, every writer is a little bit different, right? And a lot of writers, myself included, normally agonize over their scripts and take a huge amount of time, and they do it in a locked room. But with the 54, you may have to shift your approach because you can't lock yourself in a room and just, spend the next 10 hours on the script because that's only 44 left.
Yeah.
So what was your process? And I think we'll go to Brennan for this one first and then go around.
Yeah. So, well, I guess it's kind of a combo of this question and the last question. This 54, we joined forces with Bloodhound Films, who've done other films for 54 in the past, and so we like combined teams. So it was part of it was like figuring out how to work. It was like we had the opposite of Laura's problem, which is like we had so many people.
Too many cooks.
It was, yeah, it was kind of just like figuring out like how does everyone operate and like how do you accommodate each other and how do you get on a roll to make it, you know, get the momentum so you're in a flow and make sure things are moving. And so we had 3 writers, Matt, who wrote for us last year, and then Emma and Emily, who are from the other team that combined. And we kind of spitball the idea around, and that always goes longer than you imagine. You're like, we're going to lock this down in an hour. And then it's like 2.5 hours later, and you're like pulling out clumps of your hair or your beard or whatever. And then we finally got to a good idea. Hunter, our DP, was actually came up with the like foundation of the story. And then we refined it in the group. Sorry. And then we got to a point where we're like, okay, we just leave the writers alone and let them write and stop bothering them with
Feed
ideas.
them coffee and
just like and so they kind of like collaborated and fleshed out the actual script, and we just like stayed away as much as we could to not like interfere. But I mean, it still took a long time. We probably didn't get in a good place with like a final script until about 3 or 4 in the morning.
Interesting.
And I was like, here we go, baby. 54.
Yep. All right. Luke, what about you?
So I'm not usually the writer. A lot of what I've done, a lot of the competitions and stuff that I've done has been with Justin with the Magistorm Productions. But I decided to take on the task this time. And going back to the location, I wanted to have the location, not that there's anything wrong with, you know, waiting till the last minute to have the location, but I wanted it ahead of the time so I could be there and, you know, be at the session and then just start writing. And my dilemma is that I did not have anybody else there to take on some of the administrative tasks like Allie. Allie usually helps out with. So I'm trying to write and I'm getting pinged and I'm, you know, what time or, you know, so I'm doing a lot of this, and I did not plan well for that. But right after we got our genre about 6 o'clock, I talked to our DP and I said, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. This is the direction I want to go in, you know, and I'm just going to start going into it. I think by 8:30, I had a script, and then we sat down probably about till 12 or 12:30, just going through all my holes and make sure, like, well, what about this? And it's like, well, this is what I was thinking, and you know, what's the motive here? And that's and we had a script supervisor jump in about 10:30 just to kind of make sure that, you know, I didn't have any holes. But for me, I hadn't done that before. But a lot of the collaboration came on outside of that came on Saturday, where when we just started filming, you know, I try as a producer to let everybody do what they need to do and not jump in on their creativity, because, you know, that's what they're there to do, and I think that's important. But I took about 6 hours to kind of finally get through that script.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yes.
Who's next?
Dalton.
We're just staring at
I'm
Dalton.
volunteering Dalton.
I'll go next, sure. So typically how we do it is I write most of the stories that we end up making, and we just kind of kept that same formula for the festival just to make sure we actually had something to do. But we kind of, during the inception meeting, we were passing around a notepad I don't know if anyone caught this, but we just kept like muting ourselves and laughing, and I'd have to like step away for a second because we were writing down ideas for characters and just like kind of passing it on to the next person just to see if we came up with anything. And when I wrote down Boris and passed it on to the guy beside me, he just kind of started laughing. Then he put Russian accent, and I saw it, and I was like, what are we doing? But it stuck. There was just something about it that worked. But then we got our genre, which was, again, war, and we were like, what are we doing? So it was probably the most challenging script that we set ourselves up for, but we ended up having it done in about 2 hours because we weren't taking ourselves too seriously like we have in the past. And we were like, well, let's just have something done. And there were a couple of guys on the team. It was their very first time to competition, very first competition in general. So they were just like, kind of learning the ins and outs. And I was like, I'll teach you all the wrong ways to do it. But yeah, we knocked it out in a couple hours after the inception meeting, read through it. I had my script supervisor read through it, and he was like, yeah, this is awful. Let's do it. So we, wow. But I think the way we shot it really did it some justice, because reading through it, it's like a really bad Resident Evil script. But the way we shot it, I think, kind of made up for that. So, yeah, it was challenging, but it was a lot of fun. It's
fun. It's fun to go into these not taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
Because I feel like some of the best art is created that way when you're not focusing too much on being the best and just doing your best.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you kind of have to with a time competition, because
Exactly.
otherwise you're going to go crazy. Because then you'll
do anyway,
default
but
back to the writer that is perfectionistic the entire time and doesn't finish it in the whole 54 hours.
Oh, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's
that off.
so many variables. Like, you can't be focused on like being the best. I mean, it's just an absurd thing.
Yeah.
Because there's so much luck in different variables of like what genre you get.
Oh yeah,
What
and everybody
locations
has
you
their
have
own
to
strengths
have,
and weaknesses. Where it's like, even with genre, you pull a genre out of a hat, and it's like, well, I'm no good at writing a musical, but here we go.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of genre, I do have to ask, did they still have the dinosaur competition this year? No? Mm-mm. Oh man, the last time I did it, I guess that is how you mark it. They had a competition called the dinosaur competition where you could choose your genre, but your genre was dinosaur. Just an aside here, but that was fun. So yeah. Anywho, I'm derailing this.
Well,
I
we
think
got
they
to
should
derail
bring
at
that
one
back.
point. That's just us.
I'm advocating here now. Bring dinosaur
But I
back.
do believe we need to hear from Justin.
Yes, we do.
Oh yeah, the
Writing.
collaboration and the writing, right. I was
like,
I didn't think about it. I was thinking about the dinosaurs. I got really distracted by the dinosaurs. I was like, okay. I went Jurassic Park for a second in my brain. No, but like the same thing I kind of piggybacking off of what Dalton said. We kind of I've usually been the writer for, and especially with the stuff that Luke's been the team lead for. We decided to kind of do our own team lead this year. And kind of piggybacking off the collaboration aspect we talked about also. We found that in a lot of these competitions, and even some of the films that we did that was intermediate in between, it's just bringing in all the people that you work the best with and things like that. And that's kind of what we did. And then with the writing process, since the inception meeting was virtual, I was actually able to be in my office in my writing space. Because usually whenever these time competitions, I'm writing in a room in the Airbnb, and I'm not in my vibe zone space.
Yeah.
Because that's a sentence. But once I was able to do that, I locked myself in the room for an hour and a half, and I was just coming up with the story beats and things like that. And I was like, nope, this is too long. And I'm deleting stuff, and I'm like, nope, this is gonna be, And then after a couple hours, we had the script, and we went and did that from there. But it's been a lot of fun, and I'm always loving the genre picking just the way it is because it gives you a chance. Because it kind of what you said about not being the best, but just making a good film, right? Because in these competitions, it's whether you win or lose, you still get to walk away with something that you get to take and do with whatever you want with. And so if you just put that effort into it, you're gonna be surprised at what you get. Maybe not, but it's gonna be something really good. And because you're giving it your all, not for anybody else or to beat anybody else, but just to think, hey, this is what we can do.
Creation for creation's sake, and I think that's the beating heart of any filmmaking, but also especially the 48-hour or the 54-hour film fest, where you're literally creating because you like creating, because nobody's going to do this unless they enjoy it.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
otherwise it's
Very
hellish.
Yeah. But the flip side of that being that, and as we say all the time on the show, or I say all the time, constraints bolster creativity. You know, doing this is also, while you're not doing it for the sake of winning, you get better.
Yeah.
You just by sheer force of will get better.
Which makes me want to ask, did anybody have like happy accidents?
We got one more scripting,
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to us.
and then
about
hold the happy accidents thought.
Yeah.
It was interesting because, Alex is Tori's friend. I've met him one other time, and he came over to my house, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. So we were both sitting there for the Inception meeting, and we were like, he said, I'd really love to have horror. And we actually drew, what did we end up drawing? We wanted to steal post-apocalyptic, and we went back and forth. I was like, what do you want? What do you want? I don't know what I want. What do you want? And then at the last minute, we decided, okay, we won't steal post-apocalyptic. But then we drew post-apocalyptic, and somebody stole it from us. But then we ended up stealing the other one that we wanted originally. But it was, I have to thank my husband, because he was in the back, like DMing a game, and he comes in and he's like, what did you guys get? I was like, post-apocalyptic. And he's like, oh, you guys should totally do a comedy. And so Alex and I just started coming up with a story and just going back and forth. And I felt like it just flowed so easily.
That's awesome.
And he brought out his laptop and he's like, okay, I'm going to start writing some stuff down. And he's just writing, and I'm just like throwing things at him the whole time that he's writing. I'm like, okay, we got to put this in there. And we got to put this in there. We got to do this. And I don't know. It was really surprisingly easy.
That's awesome,
great.
because that's one of those things that you can either have that sort of experience, or it could go the exact opposite. There's like no happy medium when it comes to like at least formulating the idea and getting that like down and on paper, but like to have that kind of synergetic experience is super cool.
Yeah, my favorite is every time I threw something at him, he's like, I can dig it. Let's do it.
That's fantastic.
I love that.
I've worked with Alex before. He's very talented. I worked with him on a project, and you guys probably stole one of ours. No, I'm just kidding. We had ours stolen 3 or 4 times.
Oh,
so,
no.
so
Yeah, for those of you listening and watching, like this year to draw your genre, it was like a white elephant or like a round, or what are they called?
Dirty Santa.
Yeah, Dirty Santa.
I know it sounds bad. Let's go with white elephant.
This is a family show, Jonathan. It's really not, but but you could steal, like everybody drew, and then you could, I think there was like 1 or 2 times that your genre or something could get stolen, and that's kind of interesting too, because you think you picked one thing and you're already off to the races in the back of your mind of what you're going to do, and then it gets.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm getting a head start. I'm like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. Nope, stolen. Okay, let's try to steal another one. And then when it came, people were just kept stealing, but it's okay. It worked out, and worked out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Whereas we didn't want to deal with that stress. We're like, I'm just going to steal one that's going to get locked in, and then I'm not
Yeah.
going to have to worry
Yeah.
about it ever. I was like, I'm just going
That's-
to pick
that's
this one,
exactly
locked
what-
in, done.
Yeah,
Like,
That's what we went
out.
up doing.
In and out.
Love it. Well,
Happy accidents.
happy accidents. We can go back to my little brainchild that popped up. I don't know. I
Words
told
are
you.
hard.
I told you I'm awkward. But yeah, did anybody have any like happy accidents that happened that made it into their films that wasn't necessarily scripted or was unplanned? Oh, Laura's like, please.
We actually didn't plan any of the dialogues for the flashback scenes that we did. So Tori and I just sort of improv that whole thing. But the great thing is the scene where we're in the kitchen in the morning and I come and like sneak up on her shoulder. She was genuinely surprised by that. It was like,
Great.
I love it.
it was amazing. And she almost she almost broke character right then. But she's like, I held it together. You can kind of see it, but I held it. And it ended up being like a really fun scene.
I love
because of
that.
it.
I love that. That's hilarious. Anybody else?
Yeah, we had a couple. They weren't nearly as funny or interesting as that, but one was our camera started messing up and it like wouldn't read the card that was in it. So we just set it up, pointed it toward where we were going to shoot, and then magically I just see my DP. He's like, and then he's like doing this, like pointing me. He's like, just walk across the water. And I was like, okay. So I just take a walk across the water, and then he just says, cut, that's it. That's the shot. We got it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it ended up making it into it, and it was just the way that everything fell into place looked like we set that shot up for like an hour, but in reality we were just trying to fix the camera.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
we just did like a little voiceover thing through that because I was like, I really want this to be in it. It looks amazing. And then the other one was we had a mutant in our story that Boris was hunting, but nothing that looked anything like you'd think a mutant looked like. So we had the camera pointed toward the barn at one point that the horses were still in. So one of them decided to just like peek his head out for a second, and then he just like quickly drew it back in. I was like, "That's our mutant." So we put like half a second of his face in it, so people can kind of be like, "What was that?" And yeah, it's a horse. Chandler the horse.
Fantastic. That was my number one question at the end of your film. I was looking at the credits and I saw the horse list and I was like, "What the? Why is a horse credited here?" I was so that explains a lot.
That's hilarious. I love it. Anybody else? Anyone? No?
We can also go with non-happy accidents.
Yeah,
too. Not to
anybody have
bring
any
it down, but
mishaps?
just like you had a
Was there
mishap.
absolute chaos that ensued? Sounds like we had some technical difficulties.
Lots. Yeah.
God.
Yeah, we use. Well, I guess I knew both real quick. The happy accidents. We had this kind of like dream sequence scene with like this strobing effect, and I had a set of like light bars, and Dylan had a set of lights that both happen to have the same like strobe setting, and we're like, perfect. We can get the
Nice.
lighting exactly how we want it. So that like really worked out. And just like props and stuff that happened to be around, they were like, okay, this works perfectly for what we're trying to do, which I feel like happens a lot on these kind of films. Is you're like, it just little small happy accidents, especially with props and stuff that happens to work out. We were using DaVinci Resolve as a collaboration feature.
Okay.
And because we had multiple editors, and this is the first time that I've worked like on something like this where we're like having multiple editors work at once, and it was great because you can both be in the project at the same time. But the problem was that the way I won't like get super technical, but the way that like it reads the your files has to be very specific, and it kind of bugged out and essentially took a bunch of our files offline like at like 11:30
I just got like goosebumps.
Sunday night, and like everything we were trying to like, it was the music because the music came in later.
Sure.
And it just took it offline, and everything we were trying, we couldn't get it online, and we finally got it in at like, the very last minute, and just didn't have time to mix it, so we had to push it to the 5+4. Like we did everything in the weekend, and we had a cut of the film, but just this one feature kind of nuked the project for like right when we needed it, and so, but thankfully there's the 5+4, and we were able to like keep working on the film and tweaking it and making it good.
For those of you who don't know what the 5+4 is, it's actually a very new thing. It's adjacent to the 54 Film Fest, but you get 5 days and 4 nights, I believe it is, to complete your film. So it's a little bit different with its constraints, but it's still a timed competition nonetheless. And that's thankfully, that's crazy that would happen, but that's something that very easily could happen to anyone because you're dealing with tech. How did you handle 3 different editors? Like, I'm fascinated by that.
Well, we had 2. Hunter and I were kind of the primary, and then Dylan did some of the VFX stuff. So he was kind of off working more on the VFX part, and then we were. I was trying to edit forwards, and then Hunter started editing kind of like backwards.
Sure. Okay. That's interesting. That's super interesting. I don't know. I'm not as like well versed in the editing aspects, but
I'll say I've never edited backwards before.
Yeah, we were improv a little bit. We were trying to go like scenes. We were doing scenes. I never really edited backwards before either. But yeah, and just like other stuff like onlining the final footage and sound design and stuff like that.
That is interesting. I was going to pivot us to music, but for just a moment, I do want to keep going on the editing train, because I know trying to get your film in on time, a huge chunk of that is making sure you've got plenty of time for the edit.
Yeah.
You had the approach of having multiple editors. Last time I did it, I had somebody editing on the scene, like we would dump a card and start the edit. Anybody else have a different approach that they took rather than just shoot the whole thing, hand it off to an editor? Or like something you did during the edit that maybe you hadn't tried before that sped it back up for you?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. I had planned to do special effects, but we had never done special effects before.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, we're gonna make this work, and it was kind of a test area for me just to see if we could. I have assets, but our editor, Lauren Hayes, she did an amazing job with the special effects. Not that there was a ton, but she did a great job with that. And our lighting guy, Alan Waddell, I think is how you say his last name. He was, his lighting to insert the special effect, I wasn't prepared for. So it ended up, hopefully it looked believable, but I wasn't prepared for any of that stuff. But we were going to do it one way or the other, and we did the 5 and 4, and we had a first cut Sunday night, and then we were like, okay, it's kind of nice to have a couple days to send the first cut to the composer. I didn't have a composer. I was like, I asked one guy, and he was like, well, our composer ended up doing it, and I was he wanted certain categories, and we got that category, and it worked out. So so on Monday I had a composer, and I did not have a colorist yet. So I rolled the dice, but we ended up getting Jason Johnston, who helped with the Magistorm.
Oh, sure, yeah.
50 Oars. He ended up he colored out of Final Cut, and we edited in Adobe Premiere. And so there's always that
disconnect.
Not sure, how that's all going to work out, but our post team, Ken Bowman did a great job for us as well. And our film wouldn't have turned out as well had it not been for everybody, including our post team was amazing.
Yeah.
Nice. Since we are getting a little bit close to our wrap-up time, I do kind of want to go around and get everybody's input on any advice that they give to anybody listening or viewing that is considering. I mean, because the 48 is nationwide. I believe the 54 takes place in multiple larger cities as well. And if this is something that you, dear listener or viewer, are thinking about doing, what is your best piece of advice for somebody who is going to participate?
I have a couple.
He's like, I volunteer as tribute.
I guess in terms of acting, just be what you would want to see, because a lot of people kind of get thrown into like, hey, no one showed up, you have to do this now. So that'd be my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice, I had to learn the hard way. If you can't do it practically, don't do it. That would be best to save time. And then I guess for the edit, start with what you usually spend the most time on, which for me is color grading. So I did all of the color grading first, which is weird, but
that is weird.
That's those are my 3 pieces of advice, just different little areas there.
Interesting. Very
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Don't fix it in post.
Plan.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest. The one thing I've learned in doing like 4 or 5 of these now is that like the more you can plan, especially like if you sign up like months in advance, like the registration and stuff like that, you're like, okay, like I have 2 months to make sure I have these positions filled, this position, going through the list. If like I know that I can't do this, that, or the other thing, I'm like find people that I can.
Know
especially
thyself.
just like with that, it goes in the spirit of the collaboration too,
Yeah.
right? Especially to the people you get to work with and things on these, whether it's new or old. It's always fun and exciting to do that. And same thing with like talent. You can always bring in like you get to meet so many different actors doing a lot of these competitions just because of like the people that want to participate, and be in front of the camera. But yeah, it's just always just having your ducks in a row, like as much as possible. Even if it's like you're gonna like fly by the seat of your pants at some stuff at the end, but
There's
Just
so
plan
much
as
you
much as you
can't
can.
plan for in these, and the stuff that you can, it shows, and it definitely showed that everybody here that participated had some sort of pre-production planning done, and it pays off. It does.
I think having a plan B for everything. As
Yeah.
a producer, I've learned to have a plan B for myself. Like, what if I can't make it? You know what I mean? So having a plan B, and I've said this before. Don't be afraid to try new things, because I think just if you're writing something, try it, and it may or may not work, but I mean, you can try it, and then what's the worst that could happen? But at least you have an excuse that time was not on your side. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Go for it, girl.
I would say that I would be prepared to listen to all of your teammates, because while it's great to have specific roles for everyone, I would say keep an open mind to other people's ideas as well, because it can be very helpful. If you get thrown a curveball, or if you get frustrated, like, don't give up, because sometimes when you run into a hitch with things, like you were saying earlier, like, you never know who's going to be really good at working under pressure, and something better may come out because of that.
Absolutely.
I just say be prepared for anything, and if you're especially going to a remote location like ours, like, bring way more stuff than you think that you will need. Be very prepared.
Yeah. Because something will go wrong. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect set, and
Every
something
time.
will go amiss.
Filmmaking is problem solving. Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
It is.
That's all it is.
Pressure makes diamonds.
Who's next?
Essentially, like everyone said here, be prepared. Do as much pre-pro as you can if you're going to do it, even like a couple weeks to a month out, because it'll just save you a headache during the weekend to not feel like a dead person.
And actually enjoy it. Yeah.
And actually enjoy it, for sure. And just as far as like the whole thing, I think one thing I've learned is just keep it simple. If it's like an idea,
that's a big one.
Keep it even simpler than you think is simple, because that'll also pay dividends in the end.
Yes, absolutely.
Simplicity can always come out with some really beautiful results too. There's something very inspiring about something that is in and of itself very simple.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah.
I dig it. Did everybody speak? I don't know. I've lost track.
That was everybody, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much. I have still so many questions, but I don't know that we have time for them anymore. So I just want to say thank you,
Thank you
everybody, for being here and
Thanks for
participating.
having us.
for having us.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It's been awesome, especially meeting new people doing this and getting to get other perspectives that we don't normally have on the show, because we're only one season in so far. Which, by the way, season 2 is coming out
Season 2 is on
June
the way.
13th, 2023.
Stay tuned.
Go binge first season so that
Please.
you can be ready for season 2.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents on
That's
it.
our shameless self plug here at the end. Is there anything else we need to add before we go?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Ken Bauman, who is running audio right now. He's making a little peace sign over here. And to
You might hear more
BCam
from him.
for getting the footage for us.
Absolutely.
Amazing, amazing. Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Also, Studio 615. We're here in
Yeah.
Studio 615 in Nashville, Tennessee. You heard the
we-
sponsorship spot in the beginning of the episode. And
Probably.
thank you to the 54-hour film producers for giving us this opportunity.
Yes, absolutely.
Yay! Okay,
All right.
bye!
Bye. Cut.
Yay!
Thanks for tuning into the Sights and Sounds podcast, your home and resource for all things creative. Want more?
Head on over to sightsandsoundscollective.com for all kinds of helpful tips, tricks, and the latest film projects the team has cooking.
Till next time.
Cut. That's a wrap.